Hi everyone. I hope your week's going well. This week we are continuing in our investigation and discussion of Jesus and his relationships with other people. And this week particularly we're getting more into how Jesus related to outsiders, the losers of society, the people that not everyone was running to hang out with. Tax collectors, sinners, Canaanite women. And we're looking at that in conjunction with the issue between Jesus and the Pharisees. What was going on between Jesus and the Pharisees? What was at root the problem that they seemed to have, or the conflict between them and Jesus? And the disciples kind of stand in the middle here. Where do the disciples fit? Do they align with the Pharisees, or do they align with the outsiders that Jesus is reaching out to, the ones that are receiving him? That's the question to really think about as we do this as well. This week, one particular section of Matthew's Gospel that I think it'd be good to pay attention to, that maybe we can focus on, and it's in Matthew 15. And in Matthew 15, there are two stories. A story of an encounter between Jesus and the Pharisees about the tradition of the elders, about washing his hands before he eats. And Jesus and his disciples don't do that, and Pharisees call him out on it as breaking some kind of rule. And behind that rule, or connected to that rule, is a relationship. And that relationship implied is a relationship with God. And that gets at the chapter in Misreading Scripture about rules and relationships. So that's on the forefront here. What's at stake for the Pharisees if Jesus doesn't wash his hands, between Jesus, the disciples, and the relationship to God? What's going on there? Right after that story, where Jesus responds to the Pharisees and talks about things that really defile a human and brings a different perspective into the discussion, there's a story where a Canaanite woman comes to Jesus pleading for Jesus to heal her daughter. And Jesus doesn't respond right away, and then she pleads again. And that makes Jesus look a little sketchy, but Jesus is reflecting the conventions of his society. He's a Jewish person, she's a Canaanite woman. They're not supposed to have anything to do with each other. But she wins Jesus over, and Jesus rewards her faith and heals her daughter. And there's a relationship that's established between Jesus and this woman and her daughter. And there's also rules, maybe plural, that have been broken in what Jesus did. And what does that tell us about Jesus, about God, and the relationship between humanity and God? Especially in contrast between the story between the Pharisees and Jesus right before then. How do these stories speak to one another, and how do they together say something about Jesus and God's relationship with humanity, and the conflict, the different ways to respond, and the different ways God responds? And what does it say about Jesus being for the losers? Because certainly the Canaanite woman was one in Jewish circles. She was the outsider, the outcast, the worthless. So, what do these stories tell us about Jesus, God's relationship to humanity, and what Jesus is doing in terms of redefining those relationships? So that's part of the thing we're getting at this week. Hopefully, reading these stories in Matthew 15 sparks some thought for you. As you read them, take a look at the Greek, see if there's anything interesting there worth drawing out. And I look forward to seeing what you all have to say on the blog about it. Have a good week.